And then quite suddenly all is quiet. Hi, John Neal here again, and today, Tuesday the 15th of March, and somebody suggested that I look at the history of the old railway lines that have been closed down around here. So that's what I'm going to do, and where better to start than Nuneaton station. Now, I'm not a railway nerd, and I don't want to come over as one, so I won't be flooding you with lots of information about dates and people and all this other stuff. I just want an overall view of the bits and pieces that are hidden in the bushes and trees and the history of the railways that existed and still exist today in and around the Midlands here, around the small town of Nuneaton. Nuneaton station has 7 platforms, and there are lines going up and down the country as well as local ones. There are facilities, look, for bicycles. And what a better way to use this transport system than to come on a bicycle, lock it up here, jump on a train and get to where you want to go. I suppose you might need a bike the other end, but there you go. Can't have everything. And here we've got a fine bunch of enthusiasts keeping a check on the trains and enjoying each other's company, and why not?
London North Western Railway service to Crewe, Cornett, Atherstone, Tamworth, Lichfield, Trent Valley, Rugeley, Trent Valley, Stafford and Crewe.
I was going to call out some of the places that you can call in at on the way going north on these trains, but this lady's just done it for me. Thank you. Well, that was one of the high-speed trains that goes through here in Nuneaton, and they go from London through to Scotland, and obviously that one doesn't even stop. But there are a number of lines that come through here, and here, this is as nerdy as I'm going to get, so don't worry. And it says here that there are 3 railway lines go through: Trent Valley section of the West Coast Main Line, the Birmingham, Leicester, Peterborough line, and the Nuneaton to Coventry branch. Now, some of those are local services which don't go very fast, and they've got small trains, but that one was one of the fast ones, and they keep changing that. It used to be Virgin trains, I don't know who it is now, but they whiz through pretty quick at about 120 miles an hour. You'd think that would be enough, and you didn't need a high-speed train, which they are now cutting their way through Warwickshire countryside to go from London to Birmingham at considerable more speed and get there about 20 minutes before you would otherwise do. Controversial stuff. So that's the modern end of what the railways are all about. I'm now going to have a look at where the old branch line went north to Higham Village and to Shenton and Myra, and served the communities around there really for the very first time in the mid-19th century. And thinking back, it must have been absolutely revolutionary for them. And there was clearly a lot of money spent on all the buildings, the infrastructure, to start completely from scratch to build all these railways. And must have been a huge boost to the economy, not only of this area, but the whole of Britain. And it was the first place in the whole world that really was taking advantage of the new railways. Prior to that, of course, all they had was horses and carts, really, going along rickety old roads. So the railways were stupendously advanced for transport, both of people and goods, and civilization, really. So let's press on. Sorry, I've got to do this one more time. I just never get fed up of watching these fast trains go through. There it goes. Off to London at 125 miles an hour. And this one huffing and puffing its way down through Bedworth, down towards Coventry and beyond. So here we are looking down upon Nuneaton station towards the southeast, and this goods train, which I think has got about 80 new vehicles on it, is heading north west, and you can see the fairly large number of railway lines and connections going in various directions from Nuneaton, and there our famous landmark of Mount Judd. Now we've had a good look at the modern railway system, let's focus on this disused railway line, which starts at the top of the picture here on this curve of the field. You can see the River Anchor on the right hand side, and this largely disused railway line was closed down in the 1960s. There are plenty of features remaining which gives us an insight into its history, and let's go and have a closer look. This is Sandon Fields, which is a big recreational area. There's about 11 acres of it actually, and it has some football pitches and so on, and the River Anchor is over here, and it is the start of this walk which is built into the old railway line. You can hear the trains going by there, and we'll have a look at the old railway line that emerges from these and goes off north towards Ashby de la Zeus. But there's interesting, having a closer look myself, I've realised that there is a sort of a branch line that goes off elsewhere, or did do in the past, which creates quite a large area of waste ground. Anyway, let's press on. River Anchor, and I suppose to a degree it looks quite romantic, and indeed it does, until you realise that there is a big tyre stuck in the river. Anyway, this is sort of early springtime and the trees are still bare, no leaves on them yet. It does look really quite pleasant in the summer. If we look down on the scene, this grey fence at the bottom is the start of the walkway which is following the old railway line, and you can see the long sweep as it goes off into the distance. There is a fork in the old railway line system here, and that's why there is a fair patch of ground to the side which is waste ground. And from this you can see how close we are to the main railway line and how busy it is too. This is one of the non-stop high-speed trains on its way down to London. So here I am immediately next door to the mainline railway and the start of Weddington Walk. Here we are. So there used to be a sort of a hut there of some sort, but as you can see it's been newly developed into something else. So this is where it starts, and let's make our way up there. Before I go much further, just a quick word about Weddington Fields here. Of course, the River Anchor runs right through the middle of it, and over this way is the rugby club and some cricket pitches as well. But it floods, the whole area would flood quite easily when the river is very full. So there will not be any building on here at all, which is a good thing because it's, for the most part of the year, it's just open ground. Now the first thing I can see are these concrete channels, really, I suppose you could call them, which I presume ran along the side of the railway and took the cables or whatever along for the signals and what have you. There's a lot of these around. There's a whole row of them at the top here, look. So these are littered all the way along. Why these have been put up here, I'm not quite sure. So it's interesting to see what the lie of the land is, because of course the railway line will have been long and flat. And this is the section where a second line went along and underneath the main railway off towards Tuttle Hill. And here, look what we've got here. It's obviously some marker for the railway hidden among the trees. There were markers on the side of the railway which indicated to the driver back in the day, when there weren't all the communications, showing whether the train line was going up or down to a certain degree. We can see here some of these concrete sections, and the opening of them, the U shape, is uppermost. So maybe they had another one on the top as well to hold in the cables or whatever communications went along them. I thought for a moment this was some sort of picnic area, but obviously somebody's taken the effort to move these concrete sections to arrange them like this. They make very good seats, I would have thought. And indeed they do. Very nice to sit down for a minute. There are two railway lines here originally, prior to 1960. This one's a lower one, and the other one is over there, which is higher up. So that one carries on to the same level as the main line, and this one I do believe goes along and underneath the main railway line, and joins actually to, I think this one joins into the station, and that one goes and carries on over towards the bottom of Tuttle Hill, where the quarries were. So no doubt that was part of the transportation system for there. But it's very quiet along here, and it's relatively litter free, and so not too bad as a recreational area. This path, by the way, has only been put in place since the house building's been taking place. I think the builders had an obligation to not reinstate, but instate a decent surface, and it is very, very good. It served its purpose well. I do remember 10 years ago this was just a very, very muddy track, so this is a bit of an asset, really. This does make a great playground for the kids. Well, as we make our way along this part of the track, the two railway lines, as were, are beginning to merge. You can see the other one over there, which is getting on the same level as this one, and this is the point where the track would fork. And down here is the River Anchor, and the join would be about here. So this triangle of, I say, waste ground would have happened here. Looking backwards and from above, you can clearly see where this fork in the original rail lines would have been, and they both go over the River Anchor at this point as well. And now as you face towards the north, you can see the start of the new houses that they built. And this pond is one of the flood defences which are most important nowadays, particularly in this area which is right adjacent to the river. It's an area quite rich in wildlife. There have been kingfishers seen here, there are buzzards flying overhead, and regularly I can see kestrels and also some swans. Well, I'm thinking this is the remains of some building that was occupied by some workers. There's certainly some area over here which is tiled, as if it's a floor of some sort. The green railing, I think, has been put later while it was in this condition, so people didn't fall over the edge. A little bit of a drop over there. And yeah, so the council or whoever have made it look a little bit safer. I'm just going to step down off the main path and have a look at this bridge, because the brickwork on them has stood the test of time. No doubt this was built in the mid-19th century, and the bricks here are on something of a slope, like a buttress, holding this face where it is, and it seems to have stood the test of time. So it's at a slight angle, you see, and it's still there, still working. And these great big stones capping the top edge. So there's a lot of engineering gone on just for this one bridge, which just allows some sort of access from one side of the railway to another, because it leads on and across to these fields. Yep, who doesn't like a nice bridge? Nice brickwork too. Well, back in the day, this would have been open countryside, left and right. Well, on the left it certainly still is, but on the right we've got these houses, which have just been built recently. I've noticed there, they've kept some of the big trees, which is very nice, and the blossoms starting to come out. It's really quite a nice walk, this. And oddly enough, the path, look, wanders. I think it's wandering around the trees. Because the railway line, of course, would have been dead straight, or as straight as possible anyway. So let's make our way down to the Weddington Lane, as it's called, Weddington Road I know it as, where there used to be a bridge taking this railway across the road onto the next section. So I've just come along here, and whoosh, this is the way down to the road. And the railway would have carried on along here over a bridge over the Weddington Road onto the next part. Well, I'll call that part 1 and we'll finish there. In the next video we'll cross the Weddington Road and explore more of this old railway track.